a sense of capital. Hello, lads and gents, welcome back to the third part of Grab Analysis. Your host of the day, as always, is Julian, and I'm very glad to have you in again. And a quick disclaimer, as you know, in the upcoming minutes, this will not be any financial advice, consultation, or whatsoever. And of course, there's no guarantee for the correctness of the provided data. Okay, guys, let's jump onto the finish line. Checking out what is the table of content for today. As you can see, we discussed already several aspects about the company itself, and very likely a lot of analysis would finish at this point in time. But I think there's definitely something which we can add to the analysis, which is very crucial, which is very tasty and very colorful and makes the story really complete, in my opinion. And that is, first of all, the key stakeholder driver. Then we have the extraordinary potential, very interesting chapter in my opinion, if not the most interesting chapter of all. We have a verdict which I provide based on my opinion. And then, of course, we have some critical success factors which you should definitely observe if you put the stock on your watch list or if you decide to invest into Grab. As you know, for me, driver is the major player when we talk about this triangle: drivers, clients and merchants. And why that's the case? In my opinion, as soon as the driver is satisfied and he's working very well and very reliable, then merchants will be satisfied and then clients will be satisfied. I think that is basically the cycle of success when we talk about the stakeholders, which need to be treated very well by Grab. And I read some numbers, roughly 5 million drivers which are active for Grab and 4 million merchants. So you have a better idea about what kind of volume of people we are talking about. When hearing those numbers, please keep in mind that not all drivers are active on a daily basis. As you can see here, they try to appeal the drivers to be more active by this 4-tier system ranking basically. So you start as an Emerald driver, Ruby driver, Sapphire driver, and you end when you are very active and very successful as a Diamond driver. And with this different ranks, different bonuses, incentives and conditions come in hand. They really try to focus to get more people who drive for Grab on a very high frequent stage. And of course, this as well is a tool to make sure that the loyalty connected to Grab is increasing. But please again keep in mind that Grab drivers regularly are more or less self-employed. They need to take care of their own bicycle and working tools, and of course sometimes they're getting an isolation box for keeping the food warm or cold, depending what is inside. But in the same time, the commitment and the business partnership between the driver and Grab is not that close like maybe in other markets. Like for instance, in some markets the drivers need to be employed directly at the service vendor, and that is not the case regularly, which is actually quite good for Grab. Because of this, the expenditure level, as I already mentioned, bicycles, maybe insurances and some other stuff, maybe sick times, are not creating so many costs and expenditures for Grab. This ultimate target to create the loyalty to their drivers and make sure they work on a higher frequent base and push them to the Sapphire or Diamond grade, of course, is very understandable. But I think it's indeed very challenging because only weekends, feast days and actually rainy days are lucrative for the drivers. So here again, on the lower frequented days where customers of Grab not calling so often to get some food or some mobility services, in these cases actually nobody wants to work. But they really try hard to catch those more loyal drivers. And to give you an example based on reality, as a Grab driver, here and there you can select shifts, so you will work from whatever 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. and in the shifts you have higher rates of batched orders, so 80% plus of the orders are collected to each other, and therefore you work way more efficient and therefore you earn a highly hourly salary. And when the shift's getting announced, the higher tier ranked drivers can select first and go for these shifts, and then the lower tiers can select after. So definitely if you are a higher ranked top tier driver, you have higher chance to create a better outcome for you than the lower ranked ones. So I think it's very important that the management takes care of the drivers. I mean, on the long term, if they get really upset and unsatisfied, there's the chance that they even start to protest. And we should not forget that overall Southeast Asia and the people who are living there are improving their life standards. They're getting better qualifications, higher level of education, and as soon as they have more choices to go for a job, then it's not that easy anymore to engage them for doing Grab drive work, which is of course a good job. I think it's an honest job, but it's very likely not the highest paid job out there. Of course, there are some examples which you can read under some videos in the comment sections, for example on YouTube. And the drivers over there are complaining about lower income, especially compared to pandemic times. Of course, the overall level of orders in pandemic times was way higher, and the incentives, as we have seen in the last video, getting lower and lower per quarter. So that's the overall development for us as a shareholder. That's great for the drivers, of course. That's not the development what they like to see. But I guess overall the satisfaction level is really in line and on a good level. You can see here that the hourly salary was increased primarily by batches, so it doesn't cost too much money for Grab. And on the other hand, with 90% quarterly retention rate for the driver partners, I think that looks great as well. And I definitely need to state in this regard that overall the situation is very positive, even if some potential is left. Now we come to my favorite part of the overall analysis, in which for me is a game changer in terms of should I buy the stock Grab or not. And that is actually as well the reason why I have decided to already buy right now this stock and not waiting for a lower pricing. And that's the potential of acquisition of the second largest player, Foodpanda. You have seen it already when we talked about the overall market situation in terms of the competition. And you can see the German media Wirtschaftswoche published an article in September last year that currently some negotiations are going on. Foodpanda, so basically Delivery Hero, who's the owner of Foodpanda, wants to sell their market shares to some other players. Here again you can see the GMV by player, and it's very clear that Foodpanda is definitely a direct competitor and has major share in Singapore, Malaysia and the Philippines, and is present as well in Thailand and in 2 further markets. The overall purchase volume for this acquisition is roughly $1 billion, which was mentioned by Wirtschaftswoche. Who knows if that will be very the case? I could imagine this is a price tag which is very hard to reach for Foodpanda, because those markets, they are very likely not profitable. So Delivery Hero, they want to sell the markets which are not profitable, making sure they're creating a higher level of profitability in the future, because they still, after a lot of years, losing money. I mean, they are not stating it, of course, but very likely it will not be South Korea or it will not be Taiwan where they lose money in the Asian region. Very likely it will be those markets. Based on the numbers I have access to by utilizing the Delivery Hero earnings results, I expect the share in the Southeast Asian region is on average 31%. And on the other hand, we talk about a GMV of $5 billion, so not that great. But if you keep in mind that Grab is already catching a lot of synergy and network effects, and batching is getting more and more efficient, I can only think about getting this deal done and profit out of it by creating even further network effects and making therefore the business, even if it's now for Foodpanda and for Delivery Hero not a profitable one, in the future a profitable one. And this actually is not that unrealistic. I mean, then they would really have a very monopolistic positioning in the market. But we should keep in mind the antitrust risks are increasing, of course, as well. So you can see already here, Business Times stated monopoly concerns from possible Grab's Foodpanda acquisition. Yeah, it's quite obvious. That's a crucial factor. But on the other hand, I think the business overall is so competitive that maybe Grab can argue, look guys, there can't be too many players in the market. This business is only working if really the synergies, this network's getting digged, and we are on the straight path to dig this potential. And as soon as we acquire Foodpanda, we can again maybe provide better salary levels, better conditions for all stakeholders who are involved, and make sure that we create a sustainable, long-lasting business. Maybe that's an argument to convince the involved authorities to decide for the acquisition and approve it, even though if a very monopolistic setup results out of it. And I think the chances are actually not that bad, because in 2021 Delivery Hero acquired the South Korean food delivery player Woowa, and after this acquisition now they owning more or less the full market in South Korea. So maybe they argued in the same direction and it worked out well. So of course we are talking there about different authorities, different players involved and different circumstances. But why it should not work out as well in Southeast Asia? Even though it's of course very monopolistic approach, it could work out, and this would definitely be a great catch in my opinion for Grab and creating way more network effects in the future. Next to the questions, if Grab will acquire the business of Foodpanda, and if they will acquire it, will it go through the authorities and will it be a problem in terms of antitrust, is another question. And this is actually who else could buy and be interested in the shares of Foodpanda. And of course there's the big food delivery player Meituan, I hope I pronounced it right, and they already luckily declined the interest of the market. I can imagine that first of all Grab is a too heavy competitor, and on the other hand maybe they don't see the potential, and maybe there are even some other aspects, who knows, you never know what is going on behind the curtains. And then of course we have the most critical player who could negotiate as well with Delivery Hero, and that's actually the Indonesian player Gojek. So that would be the worst case for me, because then really Gojek had a start to expand their business very successfully and with another level of momentum, and I really don't hope that Gojek will take this chance. What keeps me at least slightly confident they will not go for the purchase is that their financial situation is not as close as good as for instance Grab's, and maybe they want to make sure that just the market in which they are already existing in, so Indonesia is very solid and defended, and they don't want to expand here and going for higher risks. Then of course we have Shopify with their food delivery business. Maybe there's a very tiny chance they go for the deal and try to negotiate, but in the end really again their cash balance is not greenish and positive, and I can't imagine at all that actually they want to go for a profitable way. And on the other hand, they're investing into this very risky business, and they know, okay, a strong competitor like Grab is waiting for them. Which for me is resulting in the bottom line that I expect, if Grab is very interested in purchasing the shares of Foodpanda, they will do this. And again, what is a little bit awkward is that in the earnings call, the management of Grab actually didn't sound so convinced to purchase the shares, and they really kept the overall situation as a secret. Of course, I understand it. I mean, no matter what they will add as information in terms of this potential deal, it will not be beneficial for them, I guess. And therefore, I just hope they kept their poker face. The latest update is stating that the GrabFood potential deal was delayed from originally Q4 2023 to now Q1 2024 based on price issues. So I guess some heavy negotiations are going on, which is actually a good sign if those further staged heavy negotiations are going on, and I hope that they really create some good value out of it. Maybe it's good for Delivery Hero as well, because they are just out and not losing money anymore. So I guess Grab is actually in a very good position to create some kind of bargain. But if they don't go for the deal, I think it's not immediately a negative aspect. I think they have a good cash position, they're already doing great business, they're catching up for network effects, and even more important, they're catching in a lot of Southeast Asian markets shares from their competitors, no matter if it's Foodpanda, if it's Delivery Hero, Shopify or some other brands. So I don't really think they need this acquisition. They don't need to 100% go for it. I just hope if they don't go for it that not another player who nobody has on their map or someone like Gojek comes into the game and really creates stronger competition than it was already existing. So that's definitely some risk. But if they decide for, I see high chances, they really dig the potential which results out of the acquisition. So I mean, They proved in the past they can manage this kind of acquisitions, no matter if we talk about the Transcap mobility service acquisition, which happened in 2023, no matter if we talk about OVO acquisition Indonesia, the payment service, no matter if we talk about Uber, or if we talk about Jaya Grocer, the grocery store chain in Malaysia. So let me fetch up for you again the negative as well as positive arguments for or against the acquisition. Starting with the negative ones, I think there's definitely the chance when they evaluate it, they figure out, okay, it's basically the business Foodpanda is structured very bad internally and there's not so much potential, and they should just stick to their own business and focus grabbing market shares on a natural base. Then of course the risk of getting antitrust issues in the future might be too high. Maybe the price is way too high and they can't negotiate it lower, and overall they already have the confidence to grab the full market potential by their own, even without any acquisition processes in the future. And on the positive side, if they really decide for the acquisition, what I can see there is definitely they need to provide less required incentives, so they have a very monopolistic situation and they don't need to compete anymore with Foodpanda or other players in a lot of markets they are active in. Then they can charge higher service fees to their clients, drivers, and of course merchants. Just because on the tiny but very impactful fact, I think this incentives bonus chasing by the stakeholders will find an end. And of course, for me the biggest and strongest and most crucial aspect is definitely the potential of digging further network effects, because talking about a larger potential client base, more orders, and therefore achieving higher batching rates than ever before. So I can only recommend to you to make sure you quickly do your evaluation and research about this company and think about putting on the watch list. And if you put on the watch list, take a very close look at this potential acquisition which is going on in Southeast Asia, and if the deal is done, if the authorities in terms of antitrust will approve it later on, of course, which is the biggest, in my opinion, challenge. And if you're already interested right now into the stock, I can only recommend you to make quickly research and not wait too long, because again, the decision of acquiring Foodpanda or acquiring it not will be done very likely in the first quarter of this business year. And guys, as I already stated, it will be done in the first quarter because of the delay that I am recording the second part of the third part, if you know what I mean. There are actually news out, yeah, and as you can see here, you never know how trustful and serious and valid they are, but actually very likely the potential deal between Foodpanda and between Grab already collapsed because of the merge volume which was asked by Foodpanda was very likely way too high. I mean, they set up a target of roughly $1 billion US, and I read something that Grab actually was targeting for an amount of roughly 200 to 400 million US. I completely understand the situation of Grab because basically, as I mentioned, they're already stealing a lot of market share, have a very strong position. There are definitely some downside aspects which needs to get considered by doing this purchase. And in the end, I mean, the business is very likely not profitable. You never know when you're doing a deal, if it's successful and it's really adding some synergies and network effects. Of course, I stick to my opinion. I would love to see this deal if it is a fruitful or successful one. But if the Grab management thinks it is not, the evaluation is too high whatsoever, the reason is for breaking up the conversations with Delivery Hero, then I completely trust the management of Grab, of course. But who knows? I mean, it's just the news which was shared with other media, and maybe there is not so much truth in it, because actually it was not confirmed by any of the two involved parties, no matter if it's Delivery Hero and Foodpanda or it's Grab Holding. Now you will ask yourself, Julian, honestly, that is all? That is what we waited for? That's the extraordinary potential? And I need to tell you, yeah, primarily yes, when we talk about a short perspective, but on the long term and on the midterm, we have definitely some other stuff going on. And guys, take a look at this here. So they have their banking business, and you need to know that I read something like 70% of Southeast Asian population is unbanked or underbanked, so which means that they don't have access to financial services and infrastructure. So there's definitely, just based on the circumstances of the macroeconomics, some potential existing. And as you can see here, when we talk about Grab, we have two different financial service sections. So we have GrabFin and DigiBank. GrabFin is basically, as you can see, the daily wallet payment and lending business which results out of the regular super app. And then we have DigiBank, wherefore you need as Grab a complete banking license. Starting with the GrabFin, this is going very, very well. As you can see here, the total loan disbursements are on a good growth path by 52% year on year. And it's not just about making money directly out of this lending business, but as you can see here, again, net worth effects are visible, because actually 30% of the driver partners are customers in terms of taking loans from Grab. And then again, the driver partners who are utilizing those loans and lending services are actually executing 13% more rides compared to those without any loans. That's great in my opinion, and there you can see this kind of super app ultimate goal might have some serious outcome. Going back to the DigiBank, what is DigiBank actually? That's just a regular banking business, as every one of us knows. And as you can see, they stated in the last investors slide deck they will launch Malaysian and Indonesian DigiBanks in 2023. And here with the news, actually as the first one, they received the full banking license in Malaysia. So everything is working into the right direction. And as you can see here, basically they already peaked their expected strongest losses when we talk about DigiBanks, and GrabFin is already going into a positive, more profitable area. And the ultimate target is that in 2026, the expected break-even of the financial services is achieved. So yes, we have some extraordinary potential on the short-term base with the potential Foodpanda acquisition, and a lot of potential which might result out of it. And on the other hand, on the mid-term base, 2026, so roughly 2 till 3 years more, there's another driver. The third extraordinary potential which I want to talk about is definitely the ad business. And as you can see here, not too much to add. It's already growing very well, no matter if we talk about revenue, 83% year on year, gross merchandise value, 4% year on year. Okay, honestly, that's not so great. But again, the adjusted EBITDA is hitting very hard with 160% year on year. So I think this will not be the major driver. It will always be kept on a certain level, what kind of GMV they can try to dig with the solutions, but at least the revenue and the GMV which resulting out of these services is very profitable. But the same like a good magician, Grab has always one more trick which they can provide. In this case, it's dependent to Amazon and Amazon Prime. It's Grab and Grab Unlimited. So as you can see here, it's basically a monthly subscription depending on the country where you live. You pay $1 till $5 per month, and then you get granted different kind of bonuses and special conditions, no matter if you talk about the delivery business, the mobility business, and just some general businesses like as well here. Yaya Groceries Shop is again stated here. What is great about this, I mean, it's a very uncyclical income. So even if the economy is going a little bit down and people are stopped ordering food or approaching to the regular services of Grab, still they have this very solid monthly source of income. And to just give you some numbers, the management stated at the latest earnings call that 1 of 3 deliveries are already done by the subscribers of Grab Unlimited. And on average, a Grab Unlimited subscriber creates 4 times the sales of a regular user. So I think the people are adopting very quickly to it and understand the value for them. And of course, this overall setting creates more and more loyal customers, and that again results in lower requirements of granting additional incentives to the clients, and therefore the business again of Grab, in my perspective, will get more and more profitable on the long run. Starting with the verdict. So the companies I'm interested in and doing further research, I'm putting them in 3 different categories. Do they have a growth focus on revenue and profit equally, more or less, and on profit? And when we talk about Grab, it's the case of revenue and profit. So they still try to increase a little bit the revenue. It's not growing that heavily anymore, at least the GMV. I mean, on the paper with 62% year-on-year revenue sounds crazy in growth, but again, I think next year it will be roughly 20% and it will decrease even further, at least without the Foodpanda acquisition. But the profit potential outcome and development is very present. So they try, I think, to dance on both parties and make sure to focus this equally, and therefore we talking here, in my opinion, about the revenue profit growth driven company. Here you can see all the cons collected together, with which we discussed through the past 3 parts of this AAA plus analysis. At least in my opinion, it's an AAA plus analysis. I tried my best to really provide you a very comprehensive picture of all the aspects which you should consider if you are interested in purchasing Grab stocks. And as you can see, by far the strongest concerns for me are the low GME growth. That is something which is very negative in my opinion. Of course, maybe they can increase it by additional services like financial, like ad, like Grab Unlimited, and of course by the Foodpanda acquisition. But just increasing the revenue or not the GMV growth, or at least on a high scale, is not enough for me. I don't really like this aspect, and I would love that would be not the case, but actually it is, of course. Then we have the potential antitrust issues and regulation risks. We don't know what will happen. At the moment, they try to purchase the Transcap mobility servers in Singapore and maybe acquire Foodpanda. And who knows what will be the outcome in terms of antitrust. So I think that's definitely something what we need to keep in mind, and which is very hard for me to evaluate by distance. I really don't know what will be the result out of all of this stuff which is going on over there. And then we have in general regulations, like for instance, at the moment, as I mentioned, a lot of drivers are self-deployed, and who knows if this will change, and in the future Grab needs to grant more services to their drivers and providing as well bicycles and services. I'm not sure, maybe they already do this on a certain level, but I think there's, compared to some other markets, especially in the Western world, some potential left, and this of course can have a strong effect on the expenditure level and on the profitability of Grab. Furthermore, currently the business is simply not profitable in the moment, and the turnaround overall is questionable. Of course, there are great signs and indications that the company is working into the right direction, but who knows what will happen in the next steps and if their plans really work out at the end. Then we have in general a high competitive industry. As I mentioned, guys, I think it's crazy how competitive this industry is, and maybe again it's an aspect against antitrust risks and working for Grab, because I think only a monopolistic company or oligopolistic company can survive in this very competitive markets. Then I need to add that guidance-wise, the company is not performing that impressively. So it's not like some other companies I'm a shareholder of, that they really crossing the forecast heavily and surprising the market. That's not the case with Grab. Sometimes they even miss it. However, that's not the worst one in my opinion. Then of course the reputation of the business. I mean, I compared it on a more comedian way a little bit with tobacco in, I think, at the first part of the analysis, and it's not as heavy, but I think sometimes they're really receiving some serious headwind, and I hope they will somehow transform it into tailwind and make sure that all involved stakeholders being satisfied partners. Then the business overall, of course, is highly cyclical. As soon as you are running out of money, you will not order food and pay extra services. You will not order your food at restaurants, and of course you will not even add additional money for delivery services, or as well for mobility services, or as well for running too much ads. So the overall business is definitely very cyclical. Then yeah, when we talk about all the companies which are located in Asia, not only Southeast Asia, there is a certain level of China-Taiwan risk. You might even know better the circumstances than I, so I will not add too much information to it. But yeah, it is something what we need to consider as well. Then I need to tell you, and that's maybe the reason why this overall analysis is as long as a freaking blockbuster movie. The assessment of the stock was quite difficult and complex, and the overall business seems very dynamic. A lot of consolidation, M&A activities, and whatsoever restructuring processes are going on, and it's really, I think, sometimes difficult to keep updated in this regard. So I think even though if you decide to purchase the stock and being a shareholder, you definitely need to stay very close to the business and invest further time to know what is going on over there. And then last but not least, Grab is simply not a bargain. As I mentioned, I purchased it right now because I want to participate out of the Foodpanda acquisition if it takes place. But this is something what you need to keep in mind as well, that maybe it's even better to wait a little bit more. Who knows what the future brings, I can only tell here. And now we come to the pros, why actually Grab could be a buy. And as you can see here, one of the major aspects is definitely the oligopolistic status combined with the super app setup. I mean, they already have a very strong market positioning currently with their deal with Foodpanda or without. And by having the ultimate goal of setting up a super app which combining several services in one lifestyle app and creating synergies, I think the fundament to reach this target is for sure existing. Furthermore, we have serious short-term as well as long-term potential. On the short-term perspective, of course, we're talking about Foodpanda. So basically, as I mentioned, there are already some news out. Who knows if the idea of acquiring Foodpanda will become reality or not. However, still there's a lot of potential on the long-term base, no matter if we talk about the financial services, ad services, or even additional income sources which can get established. For instance, when we talk about Grab Unlimited and guaranteeing a fixed cash flow by the subscription model. Another very strong factor for me is for sure the region-based unique parameters, especially when we talk about the population density, which is very unique in the Asian region. Then we're talking about the potential near profitability. So honestly, I expect the first GAAP profitable quarter in 2024 and the first GAAP profitable year in 2025. That's my target based on my assumptions. And for now, it doesn't look too bad to hit this target. Furthermore, we're talking about a very strong liquidity and balance sheet. I mean, in the end, they have a cash debt ratio of roughly 6. And overall, the company is going for a very strong focus, despite they are covering risks with diversification. I mean, they're active in certain services, but in the end, they know what the business is. They don't start to do some e-commercial business, for instance, on the side. I have the feeling they really do one step after each other, and sometimes for the investor it might seem that it's going too slow and some trouble is going on, but I think they just make sure that really every business they're going in, they try to first establish it on a long business and then going for the next one. At least that's my assumption. And we should not forget that they are not expanding that heavily, even if they could. They're sticking to the focus. They never reached out to India or China or even Taiwan. They have their 8 countries they are targeting for. Maybe by M&A acquisitions, they will reach out to a new one. But I love that they have a very high focus on the target regions as well. And last but not least, overall, it's a proven successful business. This would be not the case perhaps a few quarters ago, but actually the big brother and shareholder Uber proved in the past and is still proving it that it can work out. You need to invest upfront a huge amount of resources, but later on the dict synergies can really create the momentum which is very favorable for the business model and the company which is active here. And in my opinion, Grab is for sure the player with the largest potential of stepping in the footsteps of Uber. So what is my final verdict in terms of Grab? Guys, should you avoid it, consider it shortlist, or buy it? I need to laugh because actually this kind of category was not invented by myself. So if you know from which kind of YouTube channel this kind of rating is originally from, please comment it under the video down below. However, so in my opinion, it's not that clear, but I put it in the category of consider it. Why? Look guys, I purchased the first shares end of December, and beginning of January I even purchased further shares because I have a certain level of conviction in terms of Grab. I have a good feeling for it. I guess I understand the business and I like it basically, and I see it a little bit more like a gamble position, but even stronger as a story play. The numbers are not perfect. The quantitative aspects are not completely in line with the other investments I'm taking care of, and it's a little bit weaker than, for instance, Hims & Hers or Period in my opinion, and I don't see it actually on the same stage. But the story potential is that great, and somehow, in my opinion, it's flying a little bit under the radar, that here's definitely some upside which could have an effect in the future, and I want to participate to the stock. On the other side, you need to be comfortable with the purchase. But based on my opinion, I can't rate it as a shortlist or buy candidate with a very good feeling to you guys, because the outcome of this investment is for sure not that clear. However, I mean, an investment should always suit the one who's investing in it. And as I mentioned, I have a very positive, warm feeling about it. And if you're sharing the opinion, then take a closer look to it, make more research by yourself, and maybe take some money, invest in it. And if you don't like it, if you think, oh man, Julian, even after 5 minutes of watching your video, I couldn't stand it anymore, not because of just you, but because as well the no potential which is existing of the stock, okay, fine, don't invest in it. Absolutely understandable. For me as well, it was not, as I mentioned, a very clear decision. It's your money and your decision, and to invest in whatever kind of asset you like. But if you decide to invest into the stock, I decided to share with you some short, mid and long-term aspects which you can consider. And even if you don't invest into the stock and you just want to put it on your watch list, on your short list, and you're just considering it and want to observe it a little bit more into the future, you can check out those metrics when you, for instance, screen the earnings in the future, and maybe there will be a point in time when you hit on the buy button. So when we talk about the short perspective, for me, by far the most aspect which I'm actually observing in the future is the GMV incline, the GMV development of the future, especially when we talk about the food delivery services. It's currently a little bit jammed, and I hope it will accelerate back to older standards in the future. The second aspect is for sure the development of the incentives and the stock-based compensation. It's already dropping, and that's great. This is how it should be. But this development should not stop right now. Then of course monthly transactional users and GMV per monthly transactional user growth is something what we need to keep an eye on. I think here the GMV per MTU growth is more crucial because that's as well somehow not increasing anymore. And the last aspect is Grab Unlimited. Not sure if they will launch information in the earnings call, maybe on the Investors Day, we will see. But I have high hopes for Grab Unlimited, and I think this can dig even more potential into the future and create a very high level of loyalty of all involved stakeholders, drivers, merchants, and as well of the clients. And therefore, for me, it's very important that the stats of the subscription model are right and turning into the right direction in the future. Coming to the midterm base, here, originally at least, Foodpanda acquisition was the most crucial aspect for me. Who knows how up to date this aspect is nowadays after we have checked out the most current news. However, if it will get executed, then it will not be decided just by signing a purchase agreement and everything will be fine. I mean, as I mentioned, there will be some antitrust risks and authorities who need to decide about the destiny of this acquisition process. And of course, even after the work actually starts and to integrate an existing company in another company, That's for sure a challenge and not that easy, and there are multiple examples of the past in various sectors in the world where M&A acquisitions gone very bad, and I hope this will not be the case here if Delivery Hero, or let's say Foodpanda and Grab, finds a deal. The second aspect with a midterm range is the competition in Indonesia. I mean, Gojek is very strong, the competition is very heavily. This is the market I'm most concerned about, but at the same time I see the highest potential and outcome. The population growth is very strong. Economically, it's increasing into an absolute favor direction, and I hope Grab will participate out of these developments. The last aspect in the midterm range is the market adoption of financial and ad services. I mean, they already stated quite accurate numbers when break-even point is reached. Of course, high hopes are existing in the market, not just for me or maybe for you if you invest into the stock, but for other investors as well. I'm very sure all of them want to see that the financial and ad services are heading into the right direction. Taking a look into the longer future, for sure, antitrust issues is a major part. No matter if they execute the Foodpanda acquisition or not, we are talking about a very oligopolistical setup, and they want to get and grab more shares and shares of the markets of the services they are active in. And soon or later, some concerns will come to the surface and authorities will discuss it. News will take a certain focus of it. If they have more power in the market and more drivers, more merchants, more clients are affected by the Grab business, then there is no question antitrust issues will be more and more important in the future, and I hope Grab can manage them very well. The next aspect is the general reputation of the business and Grab, and of course the relationship to the drivers, to the merchants and to the clients. As I mentioned, and I even created a separate chapter just for the driver relationship. And again, for me, it's most important that drivers feeling well, because I think heaviest merchants and clients are affected by this, and as soon as the drivers are feeling good, the business is running well. This is something which is hard to measure. I mean, here and there you can watch some YouTube videos and some comments or whatever, but of course that's no empiric, reliable source, and I'm far away from Southeast Asia to create a valuable opinion. However, I try to stick as close as it gets, and I think this is an aspect which for sure should get taken very seriously by Grab and of course by the investors of Grab. Then the almost last point is the rollout of further services. Who knows what will come next? I mean, on their website they show already some options to book hotels by them, or to get some insurance services, some gift cards you can purchase by them and send through the world of Southeast Asia. Not sure how serious the source of income is in the future, but I guess there are several possible other sources of income. And of course, because we talk about the company which is located in Asia, and it's basically the same case for every company which is active there. Of course, when we talk about Taiwan Semiconductor, the risk is way more impactful and considerable than compared to Grab. But of course, if some war breaks out in this region, Grab will be heavily affected by this, and therefore this is something what you need to keep in mind as well when we talk about the overall metrics which affect an investment into Grab holdings. So guys, every good sometimes come to the end, and now we reach this point in time. The blockbuster analysis of Grab holdings, the food, mobility, financial and ad service provider out of Southeast Asia has come to an end. I honestly didn't expect it will take the length of a blockbuster movie to cover this company, but sometimes it is how it is. I hope you enjoyed the information I tried to provide it. I hope you feel now better informed than before. I'm very interested actually to figure out now, what is about you? Can you imagine to invest into Grab holding, and why or why not? Please leave me a comment if you have already a specific opinion about this, and maybe you did already by your own decision. I hope you will watch again my videos, and of course this year again, as always, I'm doing live streams to back the earnings. If you like to get more insights about different companies, please don't hesitate to join the streams. And again, as always, All what you have seen here during the full blockbuster analysis was no financial advice consultation whatsoever, and there was no guarantee for any correctness of the provided data. Guys, I'm looking forward to see you again. Until this point in time, take care of yourself, stay healthy, and see you next time. Bye bye. A sense of capital.